Okay, we're going to talk a little bit about pens here and a very quick synopsis of history. If you want to know more, because this presentation is going to be rather brief, I suggest going online. So let's see here. Oh, and where are my notes? Damn. Here we go. So the earliest pen design, well, probably second earliest, because the earliest was a quill pen, but I don't have one of those. But the earliest after that was metal nib dip pens. And the originals go way back to ancient Egypt, but from what I read, they didn't work very well, so they didn't catch on until they were mass-produced in 1822 by John Mitchell. Modern use is comic inking calligraphy. Reason being, the light flexible nibs allow a variation in line width as you use a pen, which you don't get from a fountain pen. So let's minimize my notes. Let's do a little writing here. And the nib on this is called a blue pumpkin. So I use my impromptu inkwell, the little Dixie cup. Let's take these away so they're not getting in my way. And drop this. And we'll use this graph paper. Let's see if I can actually get away with this whole thing without re-dipping it. This gives you, see, oops, we just ran out. Give that a little shake. And let's continue. Oh, and that's a disadvantage. These stupid pens can splatter or blooch. That is obviously, oh, I did that wrong. So I do need to practice my cursive. Because some of the capital letters I just don't recall very well. Dip pen, and I'll skip below that. So these things are kind of a pain in the ass because you constantly have to clean the nibs. So I'm gonna bore the audience by doing that right now, because it is easier to clean the stupid thing while the nib is still wet. And then we'll dump the ink back into the bottle. It looks like I don't have a lot of this left, so it may be time to order more, even though I don't really hardly ever use a dip pen anymore. And what I replace the dip pen with is this. which is a fountain pen. Now the fountain pen has, as I mentioned before, has a disadvantage, and you don't get varied line thickness depending on how hard you press down on it. But it has a huge advantage, and that you don't have to constantly dip it. So let's see here. Let's make sure I ink flow. Oh, pain in the ass. This thing is not as good as my Shark pen. There's a cheaper dip pen, but it seems to work better. So let's do this. Okay. Wipe that and get ink on my finger and then on everything else. Now, when you have to be careful because you can't use dip pen ink, which is this, which is India ink, and you can't use it because it has shellac and other crap added to it. It'll work fine on a dip pen because it's a very simple nib that's easy to clean off. You're going to clean it constantly anyway. But this, not so much. You need to use specifically fountain pen ink. So I'm glad I did a little research because I would have got burned on that. Now let's see here. Okay, so this is definitely a finer point nib. Nib points come in different ink widths, the same way you can get them with ballpoint pens. So this flowing this sucks. I don't like this particular fountain pen. It just doesn't flow well. As you can tell, I don't have to dip this. Now, these two type of pens have another advantage, although it is a matter of opinion. They get a really nice feel when you're writing on paper, which is you just don't get from ballpoint type pens. So let's go to my note here. This was first mass produced in 1884. Modern use, letter writing, journaling, and sometimes art, but not as common as a dip pen for that. So now we move on to ballpoint pens. And this was invented in 1888 by a guy named John Loud. It was first produced in mass quantities by Miles Martin Pen Company in 1945. Modern use, writing, sometimes art. And these are pretty much, I'd say, the most common pens. And the brand here is a Bic Round Stick and a Bic Crystal. I would guess these are probably the most common because they're really super cheap in bulk. You'll find probably either one of these in most office supply cabinets in every company out there. So there's just a ton of them. Now they're disposable, which isn't that great, but they are super cheap, and your average corporation just doesn't want to deal with buying pen refills, especially with how cheap these are. So the this is a Bic Crystal came first. I think these are invented around the 1950s, and the round stick came a little bit later. I'm not sure when. Again, that's one of the things you have to look up. The point size for these is 1.0. So here we go. Let's see how it writes. Let's see here. Oh, Motherfucker. God damn it. Come on, come on. Okay, so get this shitbox jump started. Hopefully there won't be any more problems. Now, I remember when I had these many moons over 20 years ago, the ink had a tendency to leak, especially from the inside, and sometimes it would drip out the hole. Supposedly that's been fixed, but I haven't used these in forever because of that problem. What I replaced it with is this big round stick, which I never had that issue with, but I've been told they fixed the crystals. Let's see here. Okay, this looks surprisingly very similar to the fountain pen. Of course, if you looked at it under a strong magnifying glass, you'd find that this is probably less broken up in a flatter too. Although I did have to press down pretty hard to get that. Okay, so we'll put this away and onto the rolling ball and see how we go straight out. Okay, let's see here. Same thing. These are brand new, so sometimes with brand new pens, okay, you just get problems. And then as you use it for a while, it starts working better, at least with ballpoint pens. Okay, so let's try it again. Okay. Okay, that looks exactly the same, which is not surprising. It's probably using the same ink. So now we advance to the next iteration, which is called a roller ball. Yeah, let's see what my notes have on that. And this uses a water-based ink. So I think you get a better flow out of this than the next pen I'm going to do, which is gel, which has a thicker ink. And for me at least, has not worked well at all. It skips on anything under 1.0 pen point thickness. So let's do this. This one is 0.7, but again, it is a roller ball. And this will work when the gel pens are the same ink width. Pen tip width won't. Of course, let's see if I get screwed. And these will take a little longer to dry. Not a long time, but definitely a little longer to dry than your standard ballpoint. Oh, I didn't get any flow-throughs. Sometimes you get flow-throughs with those too. So let's see here. And these were invented in the early 60s. First mass-produced in 1963 by the Japanese company Oto. Modern use, writing, sometimes art. So we come to the last and most modern of these pen iterations, the gel pen. And this is a Pilot G2, and like I say, this is a 1.0 because I haven't, I'm sure there's some brand that does, but I haven't gotten a thinner pen tip, like say 0.7, to work without skipping. On the other hand, the 1.0 in this G2 at least has worked very well. So let's see what we get out of this. Stupid thing keeps wanting to flip up on me. Very annoying. Yeah, this writes very well. At the same time, there is a little bit of dry time to it, which if you don't wait, you'll get smudge if you're not careful. I mean, this has at least as long a dry time as my nib and fountain pens. Oops, almost forgot. I'm forgetting a lot to dot the sentence endings. Kind of annoying. Okay, and now this is a gel pen. It was invented in the early 1980s by the Japanese station company Sakura. First mass-produced in 1984. Modern use, writing, sometimes art. So same as rollerball and ballpoint pen. And from looking at this, okay, from looking at this, it's the darkest ink, or at least tied with the dip pen. Now the dip pen, the dip pen nib I used is medium if you're gonna classify them that way. I have another pen which is much more commonly used by manga guys. Oh, I'm having a brain fart here, of course. Oh, I think it's an N. I'm going to have to look that up because my brain died on me when it came to the answer. Let's see here. Thank you, Internet. Let's see. Used by artists. G pen is what they call a nib. And there are a few companies that make those nibs. It's not one specifically company. In other words, there's a type of nib, not in reference to the company. And that does write a much finer line, which is why I think the manga guys like it. Although sometimes when I'm doing ink myself, I do like a thicker line. But yeah, as far as coloring goes, they're all very similar except for the a dip pen and gel pen. Could possibly be the ink formulation, or maybe even more likely they both have a thicker point on them. Because, yeah, it did say fine point for the fountain pen I had. But I guess it's kind of different classification than iterations of ballpoint pens. Because all my ballpoint, except for the rolling ball, my ballpoint pens are all 1.0. But it really doesn't show a difference. Well, from what I understand, the rolling ball pens, just because of the nature of ink flow, tend to come out wider for the point width, thickness. So I guess that's true, because like I said, the ball points I have are definitely 1.0, which is larger than 0.7. The gel pen is 1.0 also, but probably the same thing about ink flow. It's definitely both darker and thicker. Of course, it's a much nicer pen than these Bic pens. Bic is kind of well known. It's the same thing with the lighters, is making really basic, super cheap products that nothing fancy, but they work, and they work forever. I mean, people I've read have had these laying around for years, and they just pick it up and it writes. Same thing for the lighters. They just work. But they are really, really cheap and disposable. So it's not great for the environment, but on the other hand, if you're not constantly writing with a pen, it'll last forever. So really no harm done unless you're doing a ton of journaling or note-taking or whatever. Your average person is never going to use these for inking and art unless they're just doodling. This is like a doodler's pen. So you won't even be inking over pencil, which is usually how inking is done for comics and stuff. I mean, this is just like students. They're taking notes, they're bored, they'll do a little, something stupid like this. And I've definitely taken many notes with many stupid, I don't know if you call them drawings even, just sketches like that. And it's my usual disjointed YouTube video. It's going to say stream, but this is obviously not live. But my streams can be even worse. So it is what it is. Edumacation. And let's see, go back to OBS, stop recording, and hopefully this thing actually worked.